Beneath the polished surface of royal ceremonies, the relationship between Prince William, Princess Kate, and Queen Camilla is quietly unraveling. Smiles flash before the cameras can no longer conceal the distant glances, the forced handshakes, and the tense silence that speaks louder than words. The royal family has long been seen as a flawless tapestry woven from duty, tradition, and unity. But when one thread begins to rot, the entire image threatens to fall apart. It all began when William started looking at the past with eyes that no longer excused what had been swept under the rug. He was no longer the obedient prince following royal protocol. He was now the heir to the throne, a devoted husband to Kate, and most importantly, the son of a mother who died tragically. Princess Diana, the people's princess, was a victim of a broken marriage, and the name Camilla has always been inextricably tied to that heartbreak. No matter how many years have passed or what titles Camilla now holds, for William, some wounds are never healed. The fracture became more apparent when Kate Middleton, long seen as the perfect royal daughter-in-law, began to show signs of quiet resistance. She never openly opposed Camilla, but her subtle gestures spoke volumes. From choosing tiaras once worn by Diana to wearing outfits that paid tribute to her late mother-in-law, Kate seemed to be silently declaring her allegiance. And the public, still deeply loyal to Diana's legacy, stood behind her. Camilla, who had clawed her way to the throne after decades of public scorn, now faces a colder, more dangerous adversary, alienation from those she needs most to solidify her power. King Charles, ever the peacemaker, tries to maintain balance, but the growing divide between his wife and his son and daughter-in-law has become impossible to ignore. Sources within the palace whisper about intense private confrontations between William and Camilla. William reportedly confronted her bluntly, challenging her role in his mother's suffering and her growing influence within the family. "I don't need a stepmother telling me how to run my family," he is believed to have said in a tense meeting that left the room in stunned silence. Meanwhile, Camilla has been feeling increasingly sidelined. Kate and William have been hosting public events and leading initiatives without her, appearing as a united and charismatic couple, the face of a modern monarchy. Camilla's presence, once controversial, now seems more like a lingering shadow next to a king burdened by age and duty. This rift has disrupted the very power structure of the monarchy. As King Charles attempts to play mediator, his failure to resolve the friction between his wife and the future queen raises troubling questions. Why can't the monarch bring peace between the two most influential women in his life? The silence from him only deepens the sense that what's broken may never be fixed. Public speculation intensifies. Who truly holds the power now, Camilla with her official crown, or Kate with the love and admiration of the people, the monarchy? Already under scrutiny by younger generations and an evolving global audience, may not survive another public feud. And this time, it's not about public opinion, it's about the heart of the monarchy itself. The divide runs deeper because the ghost of Diana still haunts the royal halls. Camilla may wear a crown, but she can never erase the memory of the woman who captured the world's heart. Kate's ongoing tributes to Diana are not just fashion choices, they are silent protests, a reminder of the wrongs that were never righted. And this tension now includes William, whose once cordial relationship with Camilla has reportedly turned frosty. While he maintains a public facade, behind closed doors he's said to be increasingly distant. With each cold exchange and every strategic snub, the gulf between the reigning queen and the future king and queen grows wider. There have been moments in royal events where the tension was palpable, Camilla and Kate barely making eye contact, William avoiding proximity to his stepmother. Observers noted instances where Kate and William arrived early or left abruptly, reportedly to avoid long interactions with Camilla. Nothing is said, but everything is seen. The clash isn't merely about personality, it's a battle between two visions of monarchy. Camilla represents a narrative of reinvention, adapting, surviving, and slowly rebranding her image. Kate, on the other hand, embodies tradition, grace, and silent resilience, an echo of the era of Queen Elizabeth and Princess Diana. These opposing symbols now stand face to face within the palace, pulling the throne in different directions. And Charles, he remains caught in the middle, perhaps too fatigued by age and responsibility to confront the emotional volcano brewing within his family. By trying to appease both sides, he risks losing control of both. If the rift becomes public, it could ignite a crisis from which the monarchy may never recover. No declarations have been made, no interviews, no press releases, yet the silence is thunderous. Behind the gilded gates of Buckingham Palace, a quiet war brews a battle between legacy and image, between blood and marriage, between a stepmother's title and a son's loyalty. What will happen if this tension erupts into full-scale conflict? Will Charles act to protect his crown and at what cost? Or will history repeat itself, with wounds left untreated, destroying yet another generation? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain: if Camilla, William, and Kate remain divided, the monarchy itself will stand on the brink, caught between a golden past and an uncertain future. The summer breeze drifted softly over the pristine lawns of Kensington Palace as reporters, guests, and cameras assembled for what was billed as a routine charity address by the Prince and Princess of Wales. Journalists prepared for the usual eloquent speeches, a charming smile from Princess Charlotte, maybe a quick wave from Prince George, and a polished photo set ready to saturate headlines by morning. But what unfolded in front of the cameras was anything but ordinary. Prince William, tall and resolute, took a step forward, not with cards or teleprompters, but with determination in his gaze. Princess Catherine stood by his side, poised and beautiful, her hand resting lightly on Charlotte's back. Prince George stood beside them, gazing at his father with eyes far older than his age. And there, in front of the entire nation and the world, the Prince of Wales delivered a declaration that would shatter decades of royal tradition and forever alter the monarchy. Today, Daly said, we start a new chapter, honoring the past while looking forward with confidence. At that point, rumors spread like wildfire across the crowd. But it wasn't until William evoked the late Queen Elizabeth, her vision, her gentle encouragement, her unspoken hopes for the future of this family, that the gravity of the situation really hit home. Then followed the words that shattered the monarchy's foundations, effective immediately. My family will play a larger public role as Her Majesty intended. My daughter, Princess Charlotte, will begin her official duties as a representative of the crown. The audience gasped. Reporters scrambled for their phones. Behind the cameras, palace officials moved anxiously. It wasn't simply the announcement, it was the symbolism. The young princess, barely a teenager, entered the spotlight with the poise of a future queen. And behind her, her parents' strong, unwavering presence demonstrated they were not just heirs, but leaders. But there was more. King Charles and Queen Camilla were absent during the announcement. There was no word from the throne, no benediction from the current monarch, just silence. And in that hush, the message was deafening. Something had changed. This was not a symbolic appearance, it was a transfer of authority and spirit, if not necessarily title, a quiet coronation for influence. The royal family had just made a significant pronouncement, and the future now belonged to William, Catherine, Charlotte, and George. Behind the palace doors, behind the royal doors, not everyone was celebrating. Rumors have been circulating beneath the glossy surface of the British monarch for months, if not years. Whispers in Westminster, subtle changes in etiquette, and a visible shift in public mood had all pointed to one unmistakable truth. The old guard was dying, and the royal family's destiny was being secretly rebuilt behind palace doors. Although King Charles III had lately ascended to the throne, the atmosphere around his rule had already become stale. From the moment the crown was placed on his head, the monarchy was no longer propelled by youthful admiration or the mystique that surrounded the late Queen Elizabeth II, but rather by awkward appearances, lukewarm speeches, and a queen consort Camilla, whose approval ratings struggled to rise above the surface. Meanwhile, William and Catherine were advancing in every measurable manner. Their popularity was not only a matter of tabloid opinion, it was backed up by statistics. Polls routinely ranked them as the most trustworthy and admired members of the royal family. Their engagements garnered larger crowds, international attention, and viral moments that kept them at the forefront of the public's mind. Not only did they look the part, but they also felt the part, the new face of monarchy, fresh and modern, unwavering in their commitment to duty while shedding obsolete traditions. However, something more subtle was going on behind the scenes. Sources close to royal advisors began leaking details to the press, just vague enough to be denied, but specific enough to pique public interest. Briefings indicated that William had attended secret talks with senior Commonwealth leaders. Unverified sources suggested that Catherine had taken on informal advisory positions typically designated for senior royals. There were also reports of Princess Charlotte attending media preparation sessions much earlier than George had at the same age. Some dismissed the reports as fanciful. However, within palace circles, the movement was closely monitored, especially by Camilla, who had long worked to keep her position not just beside the king, but at the center of royal power. The Queen's final letter. Then came the Queen's rumored final letter before her death. Queen Elizabeth was reported to have written a series of confidential correspondences, which were kept secret and only released after her death. One letter was addressed to King Charles, one to Prince William, and another was rumored to be intended for Catherine. What did it say? Nobody knows for certain. But what is known is that shortly after the Queen's death, William and Catherine began acting differently. They appeared more confident and strategic, less deferential to Charles and Camilla. At one time, it was alleged that William declined to attend a high-level meeting hosted by Charles, opting instead to visit a children's cancer unit in Manchester, where he garnered more media attention than the king did in London that day. It was a silent insurrection, not too loud, not treasonous, but deliberate. Tensions arose over the line of succession. Though Prince George remains the heir after William, there has been rising controversy about Princess Charlotte's role, fueled by the media and internal royal critics. Many people praised her charisma, command of public events, and ability to reflect the natural elegance of her mother and late grandmother, Princess Diana. Some even questioned whether the line of succession might have eventually evolved to give her greater authority than was planned. However, none of this had been confirmed. Behind the royal curtains, there was nothing but rumors, speculation, and quiet whispers of power until now. With a single public pronouncement delivered by William rather than Charles, the supposition became reality. The palace no longer felt like a cohesive unit under a single king. Instead, it suddenly had two centers of gravity: the seated king, who was gradually fading into the background, and the Prince and Princess of Wales, who bravely stepped into the vacuum. And with Princess Charlotte walking forth alongside her father, the message became clear. The monarchy's future had arrived, and it didn't wait for permission. The king's retreat. The absence of King Charles III during the historic pronouncement was not simply noticeable. It was tangible. There was no word, no wave, and no pre-recorded message for the public. For a king who once spoke incessantly about his vision for a modernized crown, his abrupt departure from public life during one of the most pivotal occasions in recent royal history raised eyebrows and questions. Behind the towering gates of Buckingham Palace, a crisis was brewing. In the weeks preceding the revelation, royal insiders noted the king becoming more reclusive. Charles's public appearances were quietly canceled, attributed vaguely to fatigue and scheduling conflicts. He had always been meticulous, almost obsessive about his calendar. So when formal obligations began to disappear, it was clear that something was wrong. Initially, royal aides dismissed concerns. A top official even told the press that the king was simply taking a well-earned pause after a relentless first year on the throne. However, private insiders close to the monarch described a far more chaotic reality. They suggested Charles was battling with relevance rather than disease. The reality was difficult to swallow. After decades of waiting in the wings, his time had arrived. However, rather than reveling in public love, Charles found himself in the shadow of his son. Wherever William and Catherine went, they were greeted with warmth, praise, and enthusiasm. In contrast, Charles's appearances were frequently stiff, chilly, and antagonistic, particularly when accompanied by Camilla, whose image remained divisive. Inside the palace, tension grew. The king apparently disagreed with senior advisors on how to deal with the growing momentum behind William's public image. There were rumors that Charles intended to reassert his authority with a daring Commonwealth tour or a high-profile international conference, but nothing materialized. Every proposal ran into practical or political roadblocks. Then came the rumors that Charles was considering stepping aside, not abdicating or publicly resigning, but handing increasingly more tasks to William under the cover of modern monarchy restructuring. According to some insiders, this began as early as Queen Elizabeth's final months, when Her Majesty, in her private wisdom, had pushed Charles to serve as a transitional monarch, preparing the people for a smooth handover to William. The coming years, Camilla's resistance, but Camilla would not have it. She had waited her entire life to become queen. She had faced scandals, years of humiliation, only to be sidelined just as she had secured the throne. Never, according to intimate sources, was Camilla passionately opposed to any shift in royal power that did not center on her and Charles. She saw William and Catherine's public announcement as a direct threat to the monarchy's hierarchy and an insult. Even Camilla's fury couldn't undo what had already happened. Charles, overwhelmed by the shifting tides, preferred to retreat rather than resist. He withdrew from public visibility, leaving a void that was rapidly filled by William's confident voice. The royal family had always taken pride in its unity, but the split was clear at this point. The king was absent, the queen consort had become outraged, and the audience watched William, Catherine, and their children take center stage with admiration and optimism. Within the palace, the message was frightening. The crown may still lay on Charles's head, but power had already shifted elsewhere. The historic moment. As the golden beams of afternoon sunlight illuminated the Kensington Palace gardens, the cameras began to roll. Millions tuned in live from the UK and throughout the world, expecting the usual royal formality, an exquisite speech from William, a supporting smile from Catherine, and possibly a cute wave from George or Charlotte. But what followed was nothing short of historic. Prince William, famous for his placid demeanor, approached the podium with a confidence rarely seen at royal occasions. The customary platitudes were gone. The carefully choreographed motions were gone. This was not your typical royal engagement. It was a line in the sand. And standing next to him were not aides or senior courtiers, but his wife and children, the embodiment of a future monarchy. He began by praising his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, describing her legacy, unshakable dedication to duty, and quiet strength that had guided the country through wars, recessions, and scandals. But then, in a moment that sent shockwaves through every royal correspondent and analyst in attendance, he pivoted. Today, William said, his voice firm, we start something new. Tradition is not abandoned. Rather, it is evolved. The crown is not a relic. It is a living promise of how to serve. And that promise belongs to the future. Then came the moment nobody could have predicted. He turned to his daughter, young Princess Charlotte, clad in a powder blue coat with her hair neatly parted and appearing ever the royal even in her youth, and gently guided her forward. Princess Charlotte, William stated to the shocked audience, will perform her first official duty as a representative of the crown in the next month. She will start shadowing engagements with her mother. She'll learn what it means to serve and eventually will help define a new vision for our family's role in this country. The public response. The audience gasped. Even seasoned royal watchers were taken off guard. It was not only symbolic, it was strategic. The moment communicated a clear message. Charlotte was not going to be a passive royal relic. She was being groomed to take on considerable responsibility, potentially rivaling her brother George's visibility. The photographs from the announcement went viral in seconds. Charlotte, standing proudly behind her father, gave a modest smile that instantly warmed hearts on social media. Before the speech ended, side-by-side comparisons to a youthful Princess Diana began to circulate. News anchors couldn't stop airing the footage, with some calling her the People's Princess 2.0. But it wasn't just about Charlotte. This was about William's vision. In publicly elevating his daughter, he was not only honoring her potential, but also breaking away from the conventional male-dominated lines of royal power, where previous generations would have kept Charlotte in the background. William brought her to the forefront, and Catherine, the embodiment of grace and restraint, stood behind them both, her hand gently resting on George's shoulder, conveying a different message. This family moves forward, together. The audience cheered with approval. Comment sections were inundated with praise. Editorials praised the modern approach, describing it as the beginning of a new royal age. But as the acclaim erupted and the flashbulbs went off, palace insiders whispered about what wasn't on screen, the rage rising behind royal walls. Because while the world hailed Charlotte as a rising star, one woman saw only shadows emerging, Camilla, and she wasn't amused. Palace chaos. While the public marveled at William's family's togetherness and strength on stage, the scene behind palace doors was far from peaceful. Chaos erupted in the golden hallways of royal history, with Queen Camilla and Princess Anne at its epicenter, two women who had spent decades building their authority within a monarchy that was now slipping through their fingers. Camilla's temper reportedly flared as soon as Princess Charlotte's name was mentioned during the live broadcast. According to palace sources, she was outraged, believing that William's announcement was intended to undermine her and King Charles's legacy. "What right does she have?" Camilla supposedly yelled, referring to Charlotte's elevation. "She is a child. This is insane." But it wasn't only about Charlotte. It was about what the declaration meant, the start of a new royal era without Camilla at its center. For decades, she had fought her way from national pariah to queen consort, weathering public hostility, media contempt, and even the memory of Princess Diana looming like a specter over all she did. She had assumed that she had finally cemented her position in history, and now, with a single speech, William and Catherine had changed the script. Camilla demanded an immediate meeting with top palace advisors. Some stories indicate she confronted Charles, demanding that he issue a statement restoring order and confirming the established royal hierarchy. However, Charles reportedly refused, citing exhaustion, withdrawal, and feeling overwhelmed. "Let it play out," he mumbled, a remnant of his earlier resolve. "It's already begun." Princess Anne's alliance. Camilla was now isolated almost, and her ally was Princess Anne, the staunch defender of tradition who had long stood quietly in support of her brother's authority. Anne, famous for her stern dedication to duty, was not a lover of media theatrics or public power maneuvers. While she respected Catherine's work ethic, she regarded William's remarks as risky and disrespectful to their father. She should have stayed in the shadows, she allegedly stated of Charlotte's new role. "There's an order to things for a reason." Camilla and Anne found themselves linked for the first time in years, owing to common resistance rather than friendship. They attempted to gather support from senior courtiers by claiming that William's statement risked destabilizing the monarchy's public image. However, the tide had already turned. Staff who had previously loyally followed Charles and Camilla's orders were now migrating toward William and Catherine's camp. Younger aides expressed awe for Charlotte's poise. Overseas ambassadors contacted Kensington, not Clarence House. Even major media outlets adjusted their tone, referring to William's family as the modern monarchy in motion. Camilla's rage only grew. A royal insider remembered her prowling the palace halls late at night, slamming doors and issuing demands that were ignored. Anne, who was calmer, reportedly fled to her country home, choosing to distance herself from the circus. But no distance could change the fact that the public had chosen their royal family. And it wasn't Charles and Camilla, it was William, Catherine, Charlotte, and George. The younger generation had taken over the narrative, not through scandal or deception, but through something far more dangerous to the old guard: genuine affection from the people. And no amount of royal resistance could change that. Catherine's strategic mastery. While the media focused on Princess Charlotte's rise and William's dramatic statement, few realized the calm, strategic power behind the scenes. Catherine, Princess of Wales, the woman who had gracefully become the genuine architect of the monarchy's future. Catherine's demeanor in public remained consistent, serene, smiling, and effortlessly elegant. But beneath that placid facade was a woman who had spent years analyzing the palace's fault lines, memorizing its rhythms, and playing the long game with the unrivaled skill. And now, her strategy was exhibiting its true brilliance. This was not an accident. Charlotte's elevation, William's statement, and even the flawless optics of the family gathered on that platform all had Catherine's signature. She had witnessed the monarchy survive storms of scandal, betrayal, and generational divide. Where others held on to titles and traditions, she quietly concentrated on connection with the public, the media, and the future. And while Camilla struggled to gain the public's grudging acceptance, Catherine had gained genuine love, the type that couldn't be manufactured or contrived. Every visit to a children's hospice, every unscripted giggle with a nervous schoolchild, and every moment captured on camera between her and her children were all genuine, and sincerity had become her most powerful weapon. According to insiders, Catherine was in charge of managing the storm within the palace in the days after the announcement. Camilla erupted, but Catherine kept quiet. When Anne questioned the chain of command, Catherine refused to comment. Her restraint was more effective than any reply. But behind closed doors, she was far from docile. She met with William nightly to discuss public sentiment, press reactions, and the next steps. Advisors loyal to Charles began to arrive at their camp, struck by her clarity of vision. Some even claimed that Catherine had secretly commissioned internal polls months before to gauge public reaction to Charlotte taking on a more prominent position. The results were overwhelmingly positive. Legacy and vision. This was not about ambition, it was about legacy. Catherine recognized that the monarchy could not survive just by preserving the past. It needed to evolve to feel alive again. And in Charlotte, she saw not only a daughter, but a symbol of everything the crown wanted to be: modern, sympathetic, and commanding. Diana's spirit, Elizabeth's wisdom, and her own calm fire, all embodied in the next generation. While Camilla's crown sparkled in photographs, Catherine's power was earned, not inherited. And now, it was undeniable. Those closest to her claimed she never celebrated overtly, no brash boasts, no smug smiles. But in private, once the cameras were gone and the palace had quieted down, she stood at the nursery doorway, watching Charlotte sleep, and allowed herself a moment of reflection. This was what she'd have fought for: not glory, not control, but stability and continuity, a monarchy that her children would be proud to shape rather than simply inherit. Catherine, the commoner who had once been insulted for her middle-class background, had transformed into something far more powerful than a queen consort. In waiting, she had risen to the position of ensuring the monarchy's survival. The palace would never be the same again. The new royal era. As the dust settled in the most surprising royal revelation in modern history, one truth rang throughout Britain: the monarchy's future was no longer a subject of speculation. A prince, a princess, and two heirs representing both tradition and transformation had revealed it proudly and without apologies. On a sunlit platform, Princess Charlotte and Prince George stood shoulder to shoulder with their parents, symbolizing more than just succession. They reflected the promise of a country seeking stability, honor, and genuine connection in an era of uncertainty and conflict. Charlotte, poised and confident, had already captured headlines and hearts. Her charisma, natural demeanor, and startling resemblance to both Princess Diana and Queen Elizabeth had captured the public's interest. But her inclusion in official royal tasks signified a significant shift. She was no longer to spare. She was now a keystone in the crown's next chapter. George, silent but vigilant, exuded the soothing serenity of a future king. Though still young, his demeanor during the announcement displayed the early signs of a leader, fashioned not only by duty, but also by a family that chose to nurture the monarchy with honesty rather than ego. And standing firmly behind it all were William and Catherine, the quiet architects of a new royal age. No carefully worded palace memo could erase the impact of that image. It wasn't just symbolic, it was deliberate, a clear message that the monarchy's future no longer relied on golden thrones or ancient bloodlines. Its strength now came from something far more powerful: public trust, emotional resonance, and visible integrity. The old guard Camilla, Charles, and perhaps even Anne may still hold their titles, but the influence had shifted quietly yet unmistakably. A generational handover had occurred, not just in Britain, but in the hearts of watchers around the globe. And as Charlotte and George begin to step into the legacy awaiting them, one truth stands tall: the crown hasn't merely survived. It has been reborn, shaped by the ones destined to carry it forward. Amid the storms sweeping through the British royal family, where ancient stone walls once symbolizing unshakable power are now cracking under scandals, divisions, and long-buried secrets, a pressing question echoes through the halls of Buckingham Palace: who will be strong enough to lead the monarchy out of this era of crisis? When public smiles can no longer mask the icy distance behind the scenes, when internal conflicts spill out onto the front pages, and when public trust is nearing its breaking point, the royal family does not just need a figurehead. It needs true leaders, individuals with both credibility and courage to pull the institution back from the brink. At 75, King Charles III faces the greatest challenge of his reign. Far from ushering in an era of stability in the wake of Queen Elizabeth II, he finds himself surrounded by doubt, criticism, and lingering questions about the death of Princess Diana, the role of Queen Camilla, and the fate of the throne itself. Camilla, once dubbed the other woman, has ascended to her place beside the king, but remains a symbol of division. No amount of titles or ceremonies can buy the people's love, and she knows it. Now, all eyes turn to the next generation. Prince William and Princess Kate are seen as the monarchy's last great hope, a couple who not only represent the future but may be the only ones capable of restoring broken trust. Their poised public image, family values, dedication to charitable causes, and their unspoken connection to Diana's legacy make them uniquely positioned to rekindle the public's faith. William, increasingly vocal and visibly independent from his father and stepmother, is stepping into a leadership role shaped more by principle than protocol. Kate, untouched by scandal and beloved for her grace and strength, has become a quiet force for stability. Still, even they are not immune to division. Prince Harry's estrangement from the family, his public accusations, his departure from royal duties, and his explosive memoir has left a wound in the royal structure. Public opinion is split. Some view Harry as a victim, seeking his voice. Others see him as a destabilizing force. Meghan Markle, meanwhile, has become one of the most controversial figures in modern royal history, blamed by many for fanning the flames. And yet, in the background, one figure is quietly reclaiming her influence: Princess Anne. Unwavering, stoic, and loyal to the very core, she represents the old guard with a modern edge. She doesn't crave attention, but her behind-the-scenes actions, standing up for Princess Charlotte, honoring Queen Elizabeth's values, and questioning Camilla's legitimacy have made her a moral compass within the family. In an institution plagued by uncertainty, Anne's silent discipline stands out as a rare beacon of consistency. More than ever, the royal family needs a radical transformation, not just in names and titles, but in its connection with the people. It can no longer hide behind polished photographs and carefully worded statements. Transparency, empathy, and accountability must take center stage. The public's trust won't return through scripted speeches or ceremonial appearances. It will only be earned when the monarchy proves it walks alongside the people, not above them. If William and Kate can preserve their modern identity while honoring the institution's legacy, if they have the courage to speak out, even when it means confronting older powers, they may indeed become the saviors of the crown. But if they remain silent, allowing outdated systems to smother them, the monarchy's decline may become inevitable. This crisis is no longer personal, it is existential, a clash of values, of eras, of truths and illusions. And in this storm, only the brave will rise as leaders. The question now is, will the royal family choose to preserve a fading image, or will it let new voices chart a bold new path where the crown is no longer just a symbol, but a true responsibility to its people?